and something will happen to you and you will become weak. That's all right. You don't have the gift. Oh, I'd love to see something like this. You bring somebody around here having convulsions. I'm going to ask two good men, hold him! And then we're going to do some casting out. I'm going to walk up and say, man, I remember one day there was a young man came to this church, sat on the floor, and he was doing Sunday school and he was messing with somebody. And I said, send him to me. Came back there, had muscles all over him, had just gotten out of prison. Hollered, roar! I said, come out of him, thou demon! What wantest thou here? Embrace me and hug me. The Negro ran out the back door screaming, jumped in his Mercedes and sped off the lot. I don't care what it is. When God is in you, and you have faith that God is in you, nothing is impossible. These are the ones with the gift of faith. Now, the ones that don't, you need us in there with you. Matter of fact, I told the brother, stay out of my office. I need some power in here. Right. That's the way it works. That ain't bragging. That's just the way it works. Number two, what do we see here? We also know Jesus' ultimate interference in verse 19b. He says, bring him to me. See, when you got this kind of faith and stuff happens, you say, bring that mess to me. I've already talked to God about it. Bring the mess to me. You can't bring the mess to some folk in the church because they can't handle it. They don't have the gift of faith. Number three, we instantly see an illustration of why faith is difficult to maintain. Look at verse 20. And they brought the boy to him, and when he saw him immediately, the spirit threw him into convulsions, and falling to the ground, he began to roll about, foaming at the mouth. That's why. Because when you got to deal with sin and Satan and all this stuff in your life, and you see what's going on, you're going to see all this mess going on, and you're going to say, ooh, I don't want that mess around me. I say, hey, man, bring that mess here. We also see something else. Number four, Jesus allows the difficulty to become compounded with the leading question. Look at verse 21. And he asked his father, how long has it been this way with him? In other words, Jesus seemed to be compounding it. Give me some information. See, when you have the gift of faith, you want the information. Tell me what's going on about this. See, when you don't have the gift, you don't even ask the right kind of questions. You don't want the information of what's going on. You want to look at it from your perspective. Jesus said, you the Father, you know, tell me. And the Father tells him in verse 21. He said from childhood. In other words, man, he'd been a long time going through this mess. What else do we see? Number five, we realize the requester's difficulty in the next statement. Look at verse 22. And he often threw him down into the fire by the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything. Look at the requester's difficulty. If he didn't come like Bartimaeus. If, Jesus, you can do it if you will, sir. Now, that's where most Christians are today. Well, I see it's insurmountable. Well, God, if you can. No, you don't have the gift of faith. We see it in the text. If is doubt. Now, number 6. Now, respectively, check out the master's reply in verse 23. And Jesus says, if you can. I want that to sink in. Jesus said, don't you ask me if I can. I'm God. The issue is if you can. Jesus said, don't you ever try to put an if on me. I'm God. I control the whole world. You the one that ain't got no faith. If you can. I don't ever go to God asking him if he will give us this. He has told us what he wants us to do. And now we coming back with him, if he can. You don't know the God that I worship. And that's what's wrong with the church today. They're going around here with this fantasy land God. Jesus said, oh, no, buddy, no. I'm God here. You ain't God, I'm God. You don't ask me if I have ability. I own the whole blooming planet. All you want is a little old thing. Now, if you will believe in me. Now we getting real close to this, isn't it? See, the one that has the gift of faith never asks Jesus if. The man demonstrates his problem in the next verse. Look at verse 24. Immediately the boy's father cried out and began saying, I do believe, but help my unbelief. Now. See, Jesus says, oh, no, don't you come to me talking about if I can. The inevitable question is if you can. And the man says, I can't say it. I'll never say it. It's all right. You don't have the gift. And that's why you can't say it. My friends, the Bible is replete with this stuff. I'm saying, look at this. This is beautiful. Number seven. The lesson to those of us that do not have the gift of faith is seen in the impossible taking place right in front of our faces when you look at verse 25. And when Jesus saw that the crowd was rapidly gathering. Isn't this interesting? Looky-loos got less faith than the daddy had. Now I want to see if he's God. The crowds will always gather, especially in unbelief, because all they want to see is a trick show anyhow. And remember, they were trying to trick Jesus every day of his life. And Jesus will never allow himself to be tricked because he's God. The crowds began to gather, and he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, you deaf and dumb spirit, I command you to come out of him and do not enter him again. Man, this is God talking. God talking. I said, come out and don't even come back to ask for re-entrance. Some of us wrestling with some stuff in our lives. Have you ever gone to God like this? Take this mess out of my life. And don't never let that mess come back again. I'll tell you why. You don't have enough faith to believe that God can do it. Because you're operating in your flesh. And that never worked. Let's go down to number three. Number three. These with the gift of faith experience the reality in advance of receiving it. They receive reality in advance of receiving it. Why don't you go to me with John chapter 11, verses 40 through 44. John chapter 11, verses 40 through 44. They experience reality in advance of seeing reality take place. As demonstrated by Jesus at a post-funeral event. I like this one. In John chapter 11, we know what it's all about. It's about Lazarus dying. Verse 40, Jesus said to her, did I not say to you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? Verse 41 says, and so they removed the stone, and Jesus raised his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou heardest me. And then in verse 42, and I know that thou hearest me always, but because of the people standing around I said it, that they may believe that thou didst send me. Verse 43, and when he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And in verse 44, he who had died came forth, bound hand and foot with wrappings, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said unto him, unbind him and let him go. Now, why did I go there? You got to look back to when all this stuff got started. John chapter 11, verse 4. Jesus had already concluded that the event before Lazarus died. When you go to John 11, verse 4, but when Jesus heard it, he said, this sickness that Lazarus